deep-rooted connection to Farm Bureau and a profound understanding of agriculture, our guest today is the fourth generation of two esteemed Fresno County farm families. With an extensive history with Fresno County Farm Bureau, he previously held roles with as Farm Bureau's governmental affairs coordinator and membership coordinator, and now CEO. Currently, he wears multiple hats, serving as president of the Fresno Irrigation District Board of Directors, vice chair of the Kings River Water Association, chair of Fresno County's Agricultural Lands Conservation Committee, and contributes to the boards of California Farmland Trust and the Rotary Club of Fresno Foundation. And I've spent some considerable time through the last couple of years out in California's rural areas. I'm always struck by the incredible diversity of America's breadbasket, and I'm always interested in watching how California growers navigate the often crazy regulation and political environment that they live in. Today, we're going to discuss some of the trends that have originated in California and seem to creep east at a faster rate these days than they used to. So from Fresno County, California, I'd like to welcome Ryan Jacobsen. Welcome, Ryan, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Excited to talk everything California agriculture today.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but let's start with your background. Not only are you CEO of Fresno County Farm Bureau, but you're also a wine grape farmer too, correct?
And as well almonds. I got almonds as well.
Right,
But yes, I grew up with two farm families. Very very fortunate to grow up in a lifestyle that I absolutely loved, and I've continued that legacy today. And I'm out teaching my next generation. I got three boys that I'm helping to educate, and they're my weekend warriors helping me out there on the farm.
Yeah, I don't know how you have time for everything that you are involved in.
It's a balancing act for sure. It is for sure something that my wife and I we're each other's support systems and make it just all work as best as possible.
Yeah, well, that's important. So tell me about California agriculture. The diversity is just astounding to me. So can you give, a kind of a high level overview of California ag for people in other parts of the country?
Well, let's start with the basic that I know most of your listeners probably know, but not all of them, is that California is the number one farm state. A lot of people are amazed to hear that because when you think of California, obviously there's so many other things to think of besides agriculture. I mean, whatever industry you want to point to, whether it's the technology and what goes on in Silicon Valley or it's Hollywood and what happens in LA, we get kind of forgotten here in Middle California. But it's absolutely amazing the productivity of what we have here and the diversity of what we have here. So, California ag, it's well over a $50 billion direct farm gate industry. But when you look at the downstream, upstream, I mean, it's obviously we're so incorporated into what California has to offer here. But when we talk about diversity, it's diversity of people and diversity of crops. The crops that we have here, just in Fresno County alone, we say we have about 350 different crops. Statewide, it's about 400 different crops. So, that's not something that you're going to see in most, nations, let alone in a single state or single county. So that diversity is amazing. And it is really, truly the flavor and color of the nation's plate. Somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2/3 of the nation's fruits, about 1/3 of the nation's vegetables, 1 in 5 glasses of milk, the lion's share of, almonds, pistachios, walnuts come from California. So we play an incredibly important role in the nation's diet, the world's diet. And, but we're kind of one of those that we're behind the scenes. A lot of people just don't think of us as a big part of what we do here. And so I'm trying to change that in a very vocal spokesperson for the importance of what California agriculture does for the nation's plate.
Yeah, so if you're going to open in any part of the country, you open your fridge, open your cupboard, there are definitely products that came from probably even your county, right?
It's a very big likelihood that every single American eats something that originates within 100 miles of where I sit right here on a daily basis. If you're opening a can of tomato paste or anything that contains a tomato, it's almost certainly coming from my area, most likely my county. If you're eating an almond, raisin, you just name it. I can go down the list of all these things that we do here in California. There's a very good, strong likelihood that every American's eating something that originates here on a daily basis.
Right, that's incredible. And so can you give me some facts about Fresno County agriculture, which is astounding. I go to Larry for the show and
Yeah.
have meetings in Fresno all the time, so I get to hear all this, but it's always really exciting to hear those facts.
So depending on which year you're looking at, we're usually the number one, number two, number three agricultural county in the nation. And that in the last 10 years, that's been between Tulare and Kern counties right to the south of us there. It depends on a given year, but between 7 and 8 of the nation's 10 top agricultural counties are here in California. Most of those here in the San Joaquin Valley. Fresno, I mean, we held the #1 title from basically the late 1940s all the way until 2001. We lost it for 1 year, gained it for another 10 years, and it's been back and forth because of some water issues and challenges we've had that we can talk to a little bit later here. But, the productivity here is absolutely amazing. Over an $8 billion farm gate value here just in Fresno County alone. And when we talk about the sheer size, I mean, Fresno County by itself is approximately, give or take, about 3 million acres. About half of that is agricultural lands, about 1.5 million acres is agricultural lands, but about 850,000 acres of that, when we have water availability, is actually irrigated agriculture. So it's land that has water applied from surface and or groundwater. And then the balance of it, the other half of it that equates to the 1.5 is our rangelands. We do have a significant cattle industry here in the San Joaquin Valley that's very important to what we do here. But about 850,000 acres of irrigated agricultural land. And that's, again, when I talked earlier about California, the color, the diversity, a lot of that is centric here to Fresno County. #1 crop in the nation, or #1 crop in Fresno County is grapes. Raisin, wine, and table grapes. We do a ton of that. If you have a raisin, very good chance it's coming from Fresno and or Madera, Kings counties, right here locally in the San Joaquin Valley. A lot of people, when you say wine grapes and they think California, they're thinking Napa Sonoma, they're thinking Paso Robles. But when it comes to the lion's share of the industry, it's actually here in the San Joaquin Valley. About 70% of the wine industry for California is here in the San Joaquin Valley. About 1 in 5 glasses that we produce here is actually produced here in Fresno County alone, which is pretty amazing that we have that strong of a wine grape industry. So #2 is our almonds. #3 is pistachios. These are all things that, not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally, people strive and love these California products that are being grown here right in my backyard.
Right, that's amazing. And as you alluded to before, California has some unique challenges that the rest of the country might not understand. And one of the most political challenges being water. This year, I traveled at different times from Sacramento to Salinas, Fresno, and water dominates conversations, and people feel really passionate about their positions. Can you explain the issues and various sides of the conversation throughout the state?
Absolutely. So when you hear California, water, and drought, know it that it's my backyard that is the first affected in the state. Literally, we are, because I have lots of different water sources here in California, especially here in the San Joaquin Valley. But when it comes to the first cutbacks you're going to see in the state of California, it's to the federal contractors I have on the western side of my county there. And so it's a very complex system. I mean, truly, California's water infrastructure is the envy of the world. What our predecessors built going back to the teens, post-World War II. We did a lot of building up until about the 1970s, and then we really stopped. And we haven't added a lot to our system since then. But the infrastructure we had in place at the time and the way that the system was designed and operated for many, many years was absolutely incredible there. But that system now is operated much differently than it was operating in the past. The systems we have are kind of a conjunction of both federal, state, and local projects there. But particularly when it comes to the federal system that we have here that operates, that feeds so many of my farmers water here in the San Joaquin Valley, that federal system now has had significant water rededicated towards the environment over the last 20, 30 years. And that rededication of that water away from urban and agricultural interests towards the environment, we understand the purpose of having the environmental side in there, but we've rededicated just an incredible amount, even during wet years, that have not been captured, not been stored, not been allowed for us to store for times when we do need it. That has put us in a precarious state where we can have an extraordinarily wet year one year and we're back into the drought scenario following the next year just because we don't have enough storage, we don't have enough operational capacities to do what we need to do because of some of the shortcomings now with some of the environmental restrictions that we now have in place there. And so California water, it's, when you talk about water, I know a lot of people hear the word water and think, okay, that's a fairly simplistic subject where I am. But here in California, just water by itself has different topics underneath it, as far as the opportunity to move it, the opportunity to water quality. What is the water quality? The way that we do share the resources with the environment now, it's gotten so complex now that when you look at the overall water used water use in the state of California is now. For every 5 drops that now fall in the state, about 4 drops now, actually over 4 drops now, go towards the environment. So we're trying to share this pie has shrunk significantly as far as the people interest, the urban interest, the agriculture interest. And so we're continuing to try to figure how to slice this pie and still exist as an agricultural industry, because food grows where water flows. We can't do what we do without having this incredibly important asset here, contrary to what happens in most parts of the country where they're dependent upon rain during the growing season. We're the complete opposite. We don't want that rain during the growing season. We're relying upon water that falls primarily between November 1st and February 28th. And that water that's stored predominantly up in the Sierra Nevada mountains above me here, as well as up in Northern California in snowpack that gradually melts over the course of the spring and summer months, that allows that water to flow down here. That is a completely different system than what you see in most places, but it is that system that's been operated, for now over 70, 80 years, that has allowed us to build this incredible agricultural industry we see here. But like I said, we have our challenges and difficulties in trying to deal with these new environmental restrictions there that have significantly just shuttered the amount of water that we've historically relied upon.
Wow, yeah. And I did hear last time I was out there about the call to destroy or take down a lot of the dams for the
Yeah.
fish. And
That's
that just
up in
seems
extreme Northern
crazy.
California. Yeah, up in
Yeah.
extreme Northern California, they're facing potential dam removals that again there's some frustration there, because I'm actually a person that really does believe there are win-win scenarios where we even saw in the last drought that we went through here in California, it was the reservoirs and the dams that allowed a lot of these species to get through those hot summer months, simply because we were able to store water for those systems during that time there. And so I believe that there should be some more happy mediums that could be found between federal, state, and local officials and those interests that are so dependent upon this water. But unfortunately, there's just too much of the time, there's just a lot of noise and not real solutions to trying to figure out, how do we go forward? I mean, we know that we have our problems today, and those challenges may get more complicated over time. What are we doing today to help us to prepare for those? And unfortunately, I can say right now, not a whole lot. We're not building enough. We're not doing enough. We're not doing enough preparation to get us to where we need to, just because of a paralysis of trying to, solve issues that don't necessarily need to be solved the way they're doing it. So there's a lot of frustration. But when you talk to farmers here in my backyard, I mean, by far, water is the issue that keeps them up at night. That is the issue that they are concerned about, what it means for the future of their operation. We have another very big piece of legislation that was passed a few years ago, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, that is going to dictate how much farmers can pump. That's new for a lot of regions of the state. And so we're going to be having some significant growing pains during this time, because a lot of farmers had to rely upon groundwater during these shortcomings when it comes to the surface supply. But now, as you start to regulate both sides, you're going to see a lot of pain. And so California farmers and ranchers are incredible when it comes to working through these challenging issues. But I do know that when it comes to these water situations, we're looking at some very painful moments coming over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and there was a lot of talk too of the groundwater recharging, which, in the East we don't even think about that. But if you can hold that water back from going into the ocean, it just makes sense that the groundwater would recharge, right?
Well, it does, because we are so dependent upon groundwater here in the San
Yeah.
Joaquin Valley. I mean, we have the second largest contiguous aquifer in the United States right here underneath our feet. And we have some incredibly conducive soils to recharging this water when we can take advantage of it. But contrary to what you see in other parts of the country where massive river systems that just are able to do that year round, ours is very concentrated, the period in which we're able to do that. So irrigation districts like I'm a part of, the Fresno Irrigation District, have done an incredible amount of infrastructure building on the local level to put in what we call recharge basins. Very simplistic ideas. Basically, we're digging big, on this flat land we have, we're digging reservoirs. They can range anywhere from probably 15 acres in size to 100 to 200 acres in size. But we're trying to take as much of that water as it's available in those years from the San Joaquin and Kings rivers around us. We're able to take that water, divert it towards these recharge basins, and basically percolate it into the ground. The water beneath our feet needs to recharge it in those wet years, so that we're able to have it in those dry years years and rely upon it when we need it there. And so we've done a lot of investment in those areas and just really trying to do what we can on the local level to really harden and make our infrastructure improved upon, what we necessarily haven't seen a whole lot of on the state and federal side there. When I talk about, the infrastructure, you're helping me stress that again and again and again, because so many of our problems and the solution to those problems really just revolve around trying to build things, trying to make sure that we're trying to build those incredible critical assets that allow us to capture that water when it's available, because California is always in a season of have or have not. There really is no average. I mean, we use this number average when it comes to our water every year, but there is no average. We either have a lot of it or we don't have enough of it, and we need to find a way to balance it out. And you balance it out with infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was recently in Fresno a couple months ago at the American Society of Agriculture Consultants conference, where you gave an excellent keynote presentation. But one thing that really stands out to me from that presentation is how you said that California craziness used to take up to a decade to migrate to the East Coast. And now you're seeing it sometimes in a matter of months. So what do you think is happening, and why is that?
Yeah, and so that's something I really try to share with folks, because I hear too often like, well, that's just a California thing. Why should I be worried about that? So, I mean, particularly, and it doesn't matter what part of the country, but California likes to do things its own way and differently. And I am the first to say I farm in an urban state. My farmers that I represent farm in an urban state. And as much as we love the state, there are times that it makes it very challenging and difficult to run a business here, particularly when it comes to agriculture. And so, and those complexities continue to get more and more difficult on an annual basis. Not only are we dealing with a lot on the, whether it's the legislative side, we deal with a ton on the regulatory side. Just as in a few weeks, as the new year comes around and we get into the new year, I got some new legislation that's going to, make it very difficult for certain trucks to even operate on the roads to haul agricultural commodities. These are all things that, again, are the complexities that make it very difficult and challenging for my farmers to compete on a global wide scale, because there's a cost to every single one of these regulations and pieces of legislation. So why should folks outside of this area care? And you said a decade, California stuff to start to make its way back east and up north of us here in California. I would say that's now accelerated to sometimes whether it's 2 to 5 years, simply because we have so many California officials, particularly as we speak right now, California officials that are on the federal side now with this administration that has helped to expedite some of those rules we've seen start here in California and promulgate over in other places there. I guess one best example I can give here just recently was, you take the agricultural overtime that a lot of states have looked at. California already had agricultural overtime up to until 2016. We are now, because of new legislation that was passed in 2016, we are now down to a 40-hour work week for our employees, which makes it very difficult to go, and with the ebbs and flows of weather and everything else, we don't make things in a factory. It's out with Mother Nature and working in conjunction with Mother Nature. We used to have what was a 60-hour work week. Now it's a 40-hour work week. Just makes it more challenging to work and try to figure things out. That was something California started, and now we've seen in Washington, Oregon. We've seen some East Coast states also do it, and you'll continue to see those discussions in other parts of the country there, because it became, it's one of those things that really did start here in California. I would then start to argue that you're going to see some of that, whether it goes to air quality, water quality, some of these other standards there. All these things, a lot of them do start somehow, some way, or they catch more on fire here in California, and then you are seeing them jump to the federal level a whole lot quicker, or other state governments a whole lot quicker than historically, just because of pressure and other things. And so that's why I'm encourage farmers in other states to really pay more attention to what's going on here now, because I do think they're going to hear about more of this stuff quicker than maybe what they historically used to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think of Proposition 12 and the, swine
Yes.
husbandry, which immediately affects the rest of the country, because it's also saying what can be imported into the state, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of folks were maybe caught off guard isn't the right word, but there was some surprises with the Supreme Court ruling about being able to, when it came to interstate commerce and the being able to ship things from one state to another, and can a state set standards there. With that new Supreme Court ruling, there is the open door. Like, what else does this mean? Obviously, we're
Yeah.
talking pork right now, but I think there is some concern down the road what that domino effect could mean. So that's where the bigger global things, when we talk about what happens here, doesn't just stay here. I'm becoming a bigger, spokesperson. There's this, hey, you need to pay attention here. I want folks in other states that are in the ag industry to understand that we are fighting as much as we can. We want obviously things to be science based. We want them to be, what's best for, agriculture, best for those in rural communities, for those that are best for here. But obviously, as I go back to, I mean, California is a population now of over 40 million individuals. And obviously, there is only a very small percentage of that are directly employed in agriculture here in the state. Here in the San Joaquin Valley, it's quite significant. But when you look at the statewide, the San Joaquin Valley only represents 1 in 10 votes in the overall state of California there. And so for so many of these things, we have folks that are making decisions for us that don't necessarily have to live with the consequences. Therefore, like we make sure we are the voice for our farmers and ranchers. We really try to stop what we can on that's going to harm them, that's going to hurt them, that's going to put them out of business. But on the flip side, the reality is there's still a lot passing that does challenge and make it jeopardize the well-being and the future of my farmers and ranchers. And it's that forewarning where other folks need to pay more attention in other states, more specialty, because I think these things are happening so much quicker now. And I guess we can blame everything. We can blame social media. We can blame just the movement of information is so much quicker today than it used to be. But the reality is, whatever you want to look at it, it's just moving faster.
Yeah, for sure. Something that I really love about California growers is their tenacity, their willingness to fight. And there's such a huge divide between that, like you're saying, the rural and urban areas in terms of goals and mindset. I'm always so impressed by California Women for Ag. They are just
Yeah.
a bunch of powerhouses there, right? And
Yeah.
at this point, is it even plausible to think that we can fix that divide, or do we have to start coming up with other solutions?
Well, I will tell you this: I'm not going to give up, and I know a lot of other folks that aren't giving up. But I can tell you this much: yes, I mean, do we need to change the strategy? Call it whatever you want. It is extraordinarily expensive to be able to, let's say, talk or get a message out when it comes to so many of these things. I mean, when you look at a proposition now in the state of California, you're looking at a budget of 50 to $100 million on a lot of these propositions. So whether you're on the pro side, no side, a lot of times, I mean, you're just talking absurd amount of money just to try to get a message out. And you're talking more and more to folks that are, not just one generation, 2 generations, 3 to 4 generations disconnected or removed from the farm at this point. A lot of these folks I think it's misunderstandings. I've been very big, talking about the fact that we as an agricultural community, I think needing to be more transparent, kind of cliche to say. I mean, I think we all know that, but just being able to be better tell our message, being able to better communicate. I think let's go back to, we were talking water just a little bit earlier. I mean, agriculture, particularly here in California, gets a black eye for talking about water and our need for water to grow crops. The fact is that water, we as farmers, we're just the borrowers of water. It's the consumer that's the ultimate beneficiary of water. And when you compare what California farmers are utilizing to grow this crop compared to anywhere else in the world, we're absolutely world leaders when it comes to water conservation, and on and on and on. And we got to do a better job of telling that story and making folks care more. I mean, the reality is there's just a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of other things that are going on that are drawing the attention of folks. Most folks today, when they go to the supermarket, are still just buying based off of price. They just want to buy, the food they're looking for, affordable food, and the availability of food is, highest on their plate when it comes to how they're making those purchasing decisions. But we also need to make them care a little bit more about why we need to be in existence. Because I would argue California agriculture, American agriculture, it is a national strategic, defense thing that we need to be talking about a whole lot more, because a nation that can't feed itself is a nation that can't, defend itself, a nation that can't obviously see a future for itself. You've seen what happens. I mean, if you love, foreign oil, you love foreign food. That's one of the sayings we had around here during the drought. Just trying to make people really understand better that this isn't just agriculture. This is food. This is what you're putting in your plates. This is what you're looking for 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a day. And being able to really try to resonate with folks is something that we all got to do a better job of really trying to tell that message there. We got a little bit of it during the pandemic. when those grocery shelves started to empty those first couple of weeks after the pandemic, me and you were probably as agriculturists more concerned about the supply chain catching up. But there was a lot of folks that were concerned about us running out of food. And therefore you had all the pandemic, panic buying, where folks were just buying more food than they reasonably needed, but they were buying to put on shelves in their pantry and everything else. And there was just a lot of run on that. But all of a sudden there was a lot more discussions about where our food comes from. And a lot of people cared more about their food. And particularly as we start having, more concern over the environment. I mean, there's nothing more friendlier than growing, American grown food. So as you go through all these things, we just have to be able to plug these gaps and just make sure, even though they may not be specifically paying attention to this messaging, just making sure it's there and available, that when they do want it, when they are looking for it, that it's available for them to go after it.
Yeah, that's great points there. And as this harmful ideological policy impacts other states, which it is, all across the US, what are some action items that we can all do to help in this?
So, first and foremost, I mean, I know it's cliche to say, start with buying American grown. I mean, we are obviously facing more and more of where the seasonality of what fruit used to exist is now gone. I mean, you can pretty much go to the supermarket and find something, whatever you're looking for year round, because of the importation. We bring stuff in just constantly. But trying to, whether it's California grown, Colorado to Maine, I mean, I think it's at least something I wish to see is that, the American consumers doing all they can to buy American grown, because that is helping the farmers in our backyard to get through so many of these obstacles. I mean, I'm the first to tell you right now, as far as I'm proud of the diversity of the commodities we have, but it's a challenging time right now. For the most part, most of our market prices across the board are at average or below average, long-term rates right now. And so, for my farmers, I mean, you got skyrocketing inflationary costs combined with these lower than what I would consider reasonable market rates, that make it very, very difficult for our farmers to get through these very tumultuous times. And so the more that the American consumer believes in what we do here locally, and can purchase that is a great, easy starting point. But beyond that, if I'm talking to fellow agriculturists, I tell this particularly when I talk to college students over at our local university all the time, is like, we all have these invisible friends on social media. When I say invisible, we know some of them, we don't know them all and everything else. Like, what have you done, like one thing a week, one thing a month, just to proactively talk about what we're doing as agriculture, what you're doing, what you're personally doing, what is your story? It doesn't have to be a long statement. It can be simplistic as a picture and just a quick explanation of, as far as what you're doing. Why are you putting that particular pesticide on? What is a fungicide? How does those crop protection tools help us do the amazing things we do here in American and California agriculture? Just very simple messaging like that. It's the whole, a spark can make a wildfire. I mean, it's really trying to, start simplistic and make sure everybody understands that we all can contribute to that overall messaging there. It doesn't have to be just the farm bureaus or just the other ag organizations that are doing this messaging. It can start with each individual just trying to do the small thing on their part to reach those folks that aren't as connected as you and I are to the farm.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And I have one last question for you. Why do you serve the industry this passionately? You have so much time invested in this industry. What are you most passionate about in your daily life, in your mission?
Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, for me, my most passionate thing is just California American agriculture. I love what we do. I love how we do it. It is, again, it's the lifestyle. It's you either have it or you don't. And it's so funny because, I mean, there's a lot of farm kids that just, are ready to, when the time comes, they're off the farm and they're gone. That was not me. I loved every, the aspect of growing up on a farm, being a part of it. There is this incredible, it's hard to even explain, but this incredible delight that comes with growing a food supply, growing, you can deal with just about everything else in society could theoretically go away, but we still need the people that grow our food. And obviously I'm selfish here in saying this, I know this, but I think, the American farmer, we're just different. The people that we hang around, they're just down to earth, just incredible people that I get to work with, and I don't take that for granted. I love the fact that I get to work with these folks, and the fact that I get to go home to my own farm at night. All that just comes together. That I just really do have a passion for seeing this in the future. That if my kids want to have the opportunity to farm, they will have that opportunity to farm in California, and just the fact that I really do believe when everything that it boils down to, everything that we do in America that is so grand, so great, that the flag stands for, it truly is built upon and based upon what the American farmer has been able to do for this country. And so really trying just to continue that legacy and to promote the amazingness of this industry is just something I'm so proud that I get to be a part of and get to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for everything you do for California ag and across the country. It's remarkable.
No, I appreciate that. And again, just thank you to all the American producers out there. And, even, I keep talking about the American farmer and rancher, but the fact is we all know that there's a lot of other folks that make this all happen. If it's not for the the pest control advisors, to the bankers, to the folks that make our packaging materials for our crops to be able to be shipped, to those that the CPAs. My wife's a CPA that helps us, do our taxes on an annual basis. There are so many upstream, downstream jobs that rely upon, American agriculture. Really thank you to all those folks that help us bring in those crops on an annual basis, because they are truly, one of a kind. And last, I'll just end with, as the time of year where we're just thankful for the people around us and the thanks to the people that do what they do. I mean, I really can't forget those that are our farm employees. Our farm employees do just an amazing job of bringing in a crop 365 days a year that consumers throughout the world are able to provide. And so really blessed to be able to work with those folks as well to protect our industry, because they recognize that their job depends on it and they want to be there for the future. And so we do want to save this industry as we go forward.
Yeah, that's amazing. And where can people find you? You're on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, yeah. So you can find me personally on LinkedIn, or as well as the Fresno County Farm Bureau website. Very proud of what we have on there. It's fcfb.org. So check it out. And yeah, we love having folks come and see what we have here. I will tell, for those that have never been to California, or especially never been to Central California, it is always an eye-awakening experience. And I'm sure you've seen this before, Chrissy. As you've flown in here, people are like,
yeah.
"Oh my gosh!" As the airplane's coming in, like there is ag as far as I can see, and the
Yeah.
different crops that are here are just jaw-dropping to folks. The magnitude size of basically 80 to 100 miles wide by, let's call it 400 miles long, of predominantly permanent crop agriculture, as well as just a lot of row crops. It's just amazing that folks, when they see that visual, they're just jaw dropped about how amazing and how big this industry is.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget my first time flying into Fresno, and I was just luckily I had a window seat and I couldn't believe it. It looks perfect. It looks like somebody from above like sculpted it.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful. It's so amazing, and that like you said, it just goes on forever and ever. So incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super proud of it. And definitely, I mean, we celebrate, I laugh every year, but you look at, back in Washington, D.C., they celebrate the cherry blossoms every year. A very big festival around that. Well, here in California during the bloom season, if you want to visit us in February, where a lot of the country is still frozen, but we're starting to waken up here in spring in California. We have millions upon hundreds of millions of trees that are in full bloom during a
Wow.
period that is absolutely gorgeous. If you catch us coming into May through basically September, October, you have the most ripest, incredible fruit that can be found anywhere in this country, all coming off at that same time. So there really are some incredible times to come here and see the magicalness of what we have to offer here in California agriculture.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for joining me again today. And as I remembered when I saw you, you were one of our first guests on the very first roundtable,
Yeah.
North American Ag Roundtable. So thank you again for joining me. And yeah, best of luck in everything you do.
Thanks for having me back on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Listen Notes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, I would love it if you shared it. Have a great day.